to traditional handlooms and crafts, music remains at the heart of Northeast Festival. We have a very interesting session that's strategically leveraging the arts, crafts, music, and festivals of Northeast India to unlock opportunities for economic growth and cultural revitalizations. For this, we have a very interesting panelist with us joining here today.
Up next is our convener for the session, Shri Swapnanil Barua. He's a retired IAS officer with over 37 years of dedicated service in industries, commerce, youth affairs, and cultural preservation in Assam. He has made significant contribution to Assam's cultural heritage, including his role as co-convener of INTACH Assam, where he focused on conserving the state's rich history and resources. A big round of applause for our convener. As I have already mentioned, we have a very interesting panelist joining us here today. First of all, I would like to introduce to you all is Dr. Tulika Gupta. She's a renowned researcher and educator in crafts and design, advancing textile research and promoting indigenous heritage through TCRC and IICD. As the director of the Indian Institute of Crafts and Design, IICD, Jaipur, Dr. Gupta brings a wealth of expertise in textile research, design, and education. A big round of applause. Next, we have Dr. Arshia Sethi, a two-time Fulbright Fellow and founder of CREE Foundation, is a prominent arts administrator and cultural advocate. She has led cultural programming across performing arts and heritage, promoting Indian art globally. A huge round of applause for Dr. Arshia Sethi.
Welcome, ma'am. Next, we have a very interesting panelist today is Dr. Vandana Bhandari. She is an academic and author with over 35 years of experience in textiles, crafts, and fashion. She has been instrumental in preserving India's craft heritage through national initiatives like USTTAD and has contributed extensively to the field through publications and projects aimed at sustaining traditional crafts and artisan livelihoods. Welcome, ma'am, and thanks for joining us. Our fourth panelist is Dr. J.P. Sampath Kumar. Kumar is a director of the National Institute of Design, NID Assam, with expertise in design education. Dr. Kumar leads NIT Assam in offering innovative programs that integrate local resources into the design process, promoting creativity and cultural integration. Another round of applause for our guests. Last but not the least, we have Dr. Thesiunu Keditsu. Please tell me if I have spelled your name correctly. She's a poet, academic, and cultural conservationist from Nagaland. Known for her advocacy in reviving indigenous Naga textiles, Dr. Keditsu has reshaped perceptions of mekhalas and sustainable fashion. She is an author and educator, deeply engaged in Naga culture, indigenous feminisms, and local tradition. A huge round of applause, please, for all our esteemed panelists. Before we begin the session, please, I request... I'm so sorry for that. We have Dr. Nisafi Lindam. She's a cultural textile researcher, writer, and educator, specializing in the documentation and study of Northeast India's rich textile heritage. Her research focuses on cultural appropriation and the semiotics of textiles from the Naga community, specifically the Angami and Sangtam tribes. Thank you so much for joining us here today. A big round of applause once again for all of them. Before we commence the session, I request Dr. Shriparna Barua ma'am to kindly do the honor of felicitating our esteemed panelists here. Can we hear some applause, please, for our panelists? We are all set to begin the session, sir. Are we ready? Okay. Over to you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope this discussion is going to wake you up, because it's a very difficult time post-lunch, whether it's in sports or in lectures, of keeping awake, and especially when the food has been so excellent and the hospitality all throughout has been even better. But all said and done, I think we must first thank our Prime Minister for thinking in terms of this particular summit, and especially for the concept of Ashtalakshmi. You know, as you know, the Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth. And to bring in prosperity into every home in India, I think the Lakshmi of the home has a great role. So in that sense, I think the Prime Minister's thought very clearly and cleverly to position this whole movement of the Northeast, development of the Northeast, which was originally look east to act east now, through this Ashtalakshmi component. The second part of the thought, which is very important, is that it is looking at 8 states as a region, but as each state in itself. Because that is very vital in the sense that we have a tendency to look at Northeast as a single soul, but we are not, although we are one externally, but internally I think each state has its own beauty. And therefore, I think this concept of Northeast, which was very colonial, in fact, if I just tell you the history, those who are not aware of it, till 1826 we were all respectively independent of each other, all the 8 states that make up the Ashtalakshmi. There was intercourse in between them, but that was politically, or sometimes it was conflict-wise between border states, and there was also some bit of interaction. But it was in 1826, after the British came in, that we really thought about the Northeast. Now again, the British also realized that Northeast was not the rest of India. And so they decided to have this concept of excluded areas, meaning that the laws of India would not be applicable to those regions. So you had the Balipara Frontier Tract, you had the Sadia Frontier Tract, which is now Arunachal. You had the agency which covered Tuensang at one time. Till 1952, it was merged into the district of Naga Hills, which was then a part of Assam. Then again, Mizoram was also a part of Assam. It was the Lushai Hills district. Till 72, all of these states were together, except for Nagaland, which in 1963, 3rd of December, if I'm not mistaken, they were carved out as a separate state. Now, with the coming of the British, this was treated as one administrative unit, but excluded areas, in the sense that local and customary laws would apply, and the people would be allowed to live in what was known as the Vera Alvin concept of let them develop in their own genius, that we should not interfere with the growth or our concept of progress as we think should happen to the people, because they had a very unique culture of their own, each of the tribes. Now when you look at that, I think, again, as I said, that this concept of Ashtalakshmi is again very important, because it brings in to the fore the importance of the role of power of woman, the Nari Shakti, as we keep on hearing. You know, the infusion of the word Nari Ashtalakshmi has been the focus diverted towards Nari Shakti growth, of which the Northeast is a beacon. It started off, I know, you can talk about the War of Independence, 1942 struggle, where Kanaklata Barua was the youngest martyr. She was just about 16 years when she died to British bullets. There was Rani Gaidilu in Nagaland, she was fighting the British. And then we recently had Mary Com just an hour ago. Then we have Lovelina Margoha and the countless number of women who have been contributing over the years in their own way. And it is they who now, at present day, through the self-help movement, have been propagating not only economic development into their homes, but also creating and preserving the culture of each and every home, and thereby the culture of the state or the region, which I think, again, is a very important thing. But the Northeast still continues to be mysterious. It's yet to be explored. We don't even know so many other things which need to be known. So let us now begin by discussing about the theme as to how each of our participants thinks about the concept. We'll take about 5 minutes each speaker so that we can really go into the questions later on. And it will give us a base or platform for each one coming or giving a perspective to the whole issue at hand. So I don't know, Dr. Sampath Kumar could begin, or maybe our lady from Nagaland could begin, so that we can get an idea of, development. Okay, I think Sampath Kumar, you can start off with your idea of how we can do and what is this. 5 minutes, your time starts now.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, I am the youngest person here to be in Northeast. I just 1 month back only I joined National Institute of Design, but I'm also the eldest person as far as NIFT is concerned. So we did the GI projects for 19 states, and the first pilot project started from Mizoram, and I was part of it. So from there the project took on to 19 states. So we also took 300 students when we were in when I was in NIFT to Northeast region, and we explored at that time in 2002 and 2003. We explored entire Northeast. We did not leave any state there, any craft there, and I also have a personal experience of in the skill sector, developing modules for the Ministry of Labor. Around 40-45 modules I have developed, and also right now, even now, I am a national assessor. So I go and visit all these artisans right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. I have gone to Kashmir also, and I have been in Tamil Nadu and all the areas I have covered where the artisans are there in the handloom and handicraft sector. And still going back, I am also from a weaver's family only. I was born in a house where there was a hand pit loom. So from there, we got used to these handlooms, and I also got into textile engineering based on that only. So all these experiences we have faced, now I am feeling that I should give back to the community. I should give back to the community, and I have started exploring on that very vigorously. So for instance, this is about economic growth. So I have not seen that economic growth in the weavers from the past so many years, because I keep interacting with all my uncles, lot of my relatives are still in the handloom sector. So the reason which I say this statement is because I asked them around 50 years back, how much is the weaver producing per day? So they talk about, let's say, X meters per day. And today, how much is the weaver producing? In the same handloom, he produces X plus, say, delta X, marginal. So the jump that we get in the field of economic jump that we get is very marginal from so many years. Then many people, I was going through many articles and interacting with so many people also. So many people are earning, 90% of the people are earning less than 10,000 rupees in this sector. So we need to do something, not only by means of subsidies, by means of schemes, but also to improve, but also to enhance the productivity of the artisans, maybe the weaver, maybe the artisans. So for that, of course, there are many institutes like NID and NIFT located. So I look at a good market, And that reach to the market at present is very important, where we can only the total amount increase in the product, that is the final product, the cost of the final product goes up only in the marketing sector, and that should come back to the weaver in a very reasonable amount should come back. Then only the quality of the weaver improves. I've seen the weaver weaving in a small house where there is only one tubelight is there and no air. And he works for 8 hours to 10 hours per day. With family also is there. So until unless they get some schemes and then where the food and everything is subsidized, yarn is subsidized, it's very difficult for them to make the ends meet. Where now there are, even if the latest programs that you take, minimum wages they get is around 10,000 to 15,000 rupees in the government sector. So we need to do. So I've started doing on that, and I thought, okay, first step is increase the production of the weaver. So I took up a project where I could, in one operation of the weaving, so I could see 2 fabrics being produced at the same time. So the productivity has doubled for the first time, and this is still in the preliminary stage. I have applied for the patent and examination is due. So once that is done, I think we can start implementing in the Northeast sector, because Northeast sector is one area where there are more than 50% of the handlooms are there in this sector. And more capacity, 70% of the women are working here, 70 to 80% of the women are working in this sector. And I see they are working for only 4 reasons. One is the local traditional skills, and culture, that is cultural history they have, and local available raw material, and the local needs. So if we can tackle these problems one by one, we can integrate, diversify, I think we will make economic growth as has been suggested by the government. Thank you. Sir, thanks.
Thank you. I think we should pass on to the next speaker to give us an idea of what she has to think or have to say on the topic.
5 minutes. I'm going to speak only for Nagaland because I'm very happy to be part of this panel, but I think it's very important, being from the Northeast, to speak only for our own states. And so my concern, my work, is only for Nagaland, where, especially in the field of fashion, under which textiles comes, we don't have a local economy. So I'm sure many of you are aware, fashion is a very big thing for Nagas. You know, in my research, I've argued that the way that we use cloth, our textiles, to speak our identities, to identify our status, etc., has transposed into modern ways of using fashion. And so even in modern iterations, fashion is very, very important for us to communicate very many identities and statuses and sort of social interactions as well. With that in mind, when I moved back to Nagaland, I realized that we do have a very vibrant fashion culture, but textiles, indigenous textiles, are nowhere in the scene. It's indigenous textiles, and our use of indigenous textiles was something apart from the fashion culture. And so then my question was, why? Is it possible for us to integrate our indigenous textiles into our fashion expressions? For this, I use social media because I identify as a very young woman who's financially independent with some disposable income. So my target group was women like myself, with money to spend, fashion conscious. And I use social media to reach out to women like myself to argue for, can we spend our money also on our indigenous textiles as we are making our fashion purchases? This involved demonstrating the viability of our indigenous textiles. So through my social media account, what I do is I wear the textiles every day. I don't create outfits just for the sake of the fashion piece. I wear it in my everyday work, everyday life, and I document my outfits. All my outfits incorporate various textiles, like I'm exhibiting myself today as well. I've used my textiles in a very sort of modern, hopefully fashionable way. This is the 7th year now. I've managed to convince a lot of Naga women, as well as women from the Northeast and elsewhere, to rethink the idea of textiles, cultural textiles, as something that is a relic, something that belongs in the realm of the traditional, something that we must use apart from our daily lives. And so that has been my work. The second aspect is also then the argument for price, how much you pay, because fashionably forward women or men are willing to spend a lot for branded items, but they're not willing to spend as much for our indigenous handmade textiles. And so then to make an argument for why these textiles are valuable, why they deserve to be thought of as luxury purchases even. And so creating a narrative, telling stories. I'm a writer, I'm a poet, so I use narrative strategies to tell people about the stories of the textiles. In Nagaland, very specifically, we don't have male weavers on the loin loom. So there are handloom units in the state, but when it comes to loin loom, the cloth I'm wearing is made from the loin loom. Loin loom weaving is done exclusively by women, and culturally it is taboo for men to touch or do loin loom weaving. So it becomes, as a feminist, it becomes a very sort of female-oriented, female-empowering endeavor to promote indigenous textiles. The thing with loin loom weaving is, although there have been attempts and there are currently some weaving units, loin loom weaving is actually a very sort of idiosyncratic, personal, mode of production. It is done, there's no timeline. A woman weaves when she can and how she wants. You cannot have standardized pieces. You cannot have standard sizes in that sense. Yes, there are some standard patterns that you associate with certain tribes and tribal identities. But the thing is, loin loom weaving is actually a very personal and creative expression.
Doctor, I think we'll come back to these issues now. If you could just hand it over to...
Okay, I'll just finish. I'll just finish. So in that sense, I've been able to share that with consumers, female consumers, to convince them that it is worth paying for indigenous loin loom woven textiles. Thank you.
So now we have music and festivals is something Arshia was associated with. We've talked on the crafts bit of it and the apparel part of it. I think Arshia would highlight on the expectations of music and festivals in our whole effort.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here to be part of this panel. There is a frog in my throat, which you may have been able to hear. That's because actually I'm still running fever. But this opportunity is so important. I don't care about any fever or any other setback. I just had to be here to add my weight to a very important initiative, which is a sort of a focus on the prosperity possibilities in Northeast India, the states of the Northeast India, which now are regarded as 8. 50 years ago this month, I fell in love with the northeastern part of India. And for 50 years, I have carried it in my heart and in my mind. In every possible way that a woman can be associated with the land, were all options and opportunities for me. Eventually, I am recognized today for my doctoral work, which is on Assam. It is on the arts of Assam, particularly one dance form called Satriya, pronounced in Assam as Khotriya, but because it is spelt with an X when you write it in English, I thought it would become a Scrabble player's delight reading through my dissertation. I used the word S, and I have now got into the habit of pronouncing it incorrectly as Satriya. So if that word escapes me, forgive me. I'm already giving you the background of the explanation. My life has been a life in the arts. and I have helped build tangible and intangible entities. A tangible example of a tangible entity is like the India Habitat Center that we know in Delhi as a great center where the arts find expression. An example of an intangible heritage, intangible institution is a festival. And when I went to the Northeast, and every time I go to the Northeast, I literally pull my hair looking at the opportunities that exist there, which we are losing. A lifetime's work across the globe, because I have worked in New York extensively, and I have worked in university systems of the United States of America. So both academically I know the issues that are foregrounded these days, and I see them playing out every day. The human being is the patra, the person who enacts the cultural expression. But there are issues that are so central. Nowhere in the world, including in most of India, do you find living culture representations. We do not, making a museum in the Northeast is one of those things you have to tick off, but it's not necessary, because the immersive, if you immerse yourself in that culture or that life, you capture so much. Evening walks, when I was but a 14-year-old girl who went to Assam for the first time and studied in Shillong, I found ministers walking with a guitar around their neck, strumming and singing. They were accessible, they were imbued in their music, and that is why the Western Music Initiative in India actually emanates from the Northeast, whether it's Lu Majao, or it is the Shillong Choir, or it is all the great pianists who have emerged from the northeastern part of India. It is a unique system where they need not say anything, they are doing it. If you look at food, the great chef Vikas Khanna was recently asked, which is India's global cuisine worthy of acceptance in the globe? And he said, without a minute's hesitation, he said, Assamese. And I say, you're saying Assamese because you have not eaten Naga, you have not eaten Manipur food. It's delicious and it's ticking all the right boxes. They talk local, they talk organic, they talk, farm to table. That is the life that is led there. Every time I would go to Majuli, crossing the Brahmaputra in a ferry, at Nimati Ghat and Jorhat side, I would always buy a huge packet of putti mas, which is a little fish, deep fried, crisp and crunchy. And my journey across the river, which would take 2 hours and more, would be a joy. I mean, it was a feast for the eyes, for everything. I know they're going, I'm sounding as if I'm jumping. The northeastern region of India has given us 2 very important classical dance styles, Manipuri and Satriya. And of course, we must make special forums for them. But equally important is how much dance, just dance, Bihu, Bagaramba, is all part of the living, the annual cycle. People go back and they dance, and the next dance revolution from India, you know that there has been one that has come in the form of Bhangra. The music of Bhangra has become global. On the cusp of this globalization is next Dandiya. To some extent, because Gujaratis are very prominently, they're a big diaspora of India. But after that, if there's anything that's just waiting to be recognized, it is Bihu. So I think that with a little focused work, we can showcase the diversity of the northeastern region, the 8 states that constitute the region as we are seeing it now. I also want to mention that not only performative traditions, but life traditions, how much the sound of the weaving, we talked about it, the sound of the shuttle as it goes through on the pit looms, kind of a thing, becomes part of the music. we have such amazing voices in the Bollywood and tradition of India. We have coming from this region. Should we? Now it's a moment of choice. In fact, we are so rich that it is a moment of choice we have. Do we only showcase ourselves, or do we invite the world to join us, in which collaborative work may well happen? So you may have a Scandinavian drummer who may drum with a bihu drummer or a khol drummer, and you may have a pung with a local violinist or a cellist from anywhere else in the world. I mean, how far are you willing to go? How secure are you in your own identity that you're willing to welcome other people? I think this is the choice that this brilliant mosaic of 8 states has before it. Are we going to invite the world to us, or are we just going to showcase ourselves to the world? Okay, I think there'll be many other questions that we can bring up later.
We'll take it up later on. I think we can go on to Dr. Nisafi as to what she has to say on the topic.
Yes, so good evening, everyone. So honored to be here at this grand celebration, and a very spectacular one at that. So my... okay. So, my approach to all of this might be a little bit different, because I have to give you a bit of a context, personal experience. So I really wanted to put forth the point that as young people, especially from the community, we really need to start looking at how can we contribute towards preserving the culture and breathing new life into it, while still retaining the cultural essence, because that is very important. We're talking about strategically leveraging, and we're talking about cultural revitalization, right? And I might have points which might seem a little bit too technical, because I have been living with artisans from time to time. I've been staying with them, and I've been eating their food. I've been cooking with them. I've been learning the technical aspects of weaving and materials and all of that. So I was actually exposed to culture very early on. I was born into a Khasi and a Mizo household, so a mix of matrilineal and patrilineal society. That sort of sparked interest in me when it comes to cultures. Then I got the opportunity during my bachelor's and my master's to study craft documentation. And this was an initiative by NIFT and the Ministry of Textiles. And I think these sort of initiatives are really important for young people to sort of have that experiential learning. Because if they don't have that, then how do we expect them to even have that opportunity to understand something and maybe pick it up later on? And as a young scholar at the time, as a young student, that must have been 10 years back, when I was trying to do my research regarding these crafts, I could not find enough existing information on the internet. We had a few books and all of that, but that was it. There was little existing information, but there was also quite a few misinformation, misrepresentation. Some products would be marketed as something that is actually not it. And truthfully, at the time, I was a little bit disappointed, right? And of course, as a young student at the time, I was a bit displeased because my culture was presented in that way. But in recent years, of course, with a lot of promotion and all of that, things have changed. There's been a lot more promotion. But right now, what is required is not just the preservation and promotion. We need to start retaining the cultural essence of the crafts. And this is why I'm asking young people to really take this up, because whether you're doing research or whether you're doing documentation, all of these affect so many other things that would promote our crafts. If you want to register for GI, you need in-depth research for that, in-depth information about a certain craft. If you want to work with cultural, contemporization of textiles or product diversification, there are so many communities in the Northeast, as I said earlier. Each community is so different. If you look at the Nagas, they have their warrior shawls. These motifs mean something. It has very deep symbolic significance. But they also have motifs that are just directly inspired from nature, right? So in order to even understand the nuances of what can be contemporarized, the type of product diversification that we're looking for, one needs to do a lot of documentation and research. And yes, it was also mentioned earlier that, for patrilineal societies, although there's some sort of leniency now, in the rural areas or traditionally, women would have no right towards inheritance or property. They don't have control over that. So we could say that, weaving is a tool of empowerment in that case, and it allows them it gives them the opportunity to work from home while still taking care of their families and being independent. So yes, this is just a little bit about what I want.
Don't finish all your points immediately,
Yes.
because in course of discussion, I think we'll come through. Now pass it on to Tulika, please.
Yeah, hello and thank you, sir. So I'll quickly go to the point, strategically leveraging the arts, crafts, music and Festival of Northeast India. What I see, just for a background, that I've come from Rajasthan. I'm heading the institute called Indian Institute of Crafts and Design, and we look at crafts across the country and even abroad. And Northeast is very rich. There are different regions in India which are very rich in terms of crafts, but so is Northeast. And each state, where I think we can really look at and what are the positives, is that honestly, I see a lot more English-speaking people in rural areas, even in Assam, as compared to, say, Rajasthan or Gujarat. So I think this is one thing which can also be used in terms of when we look at entrepreneurship. Because what we need to promote now is, of course, we have beautiful products, but we can't only romanticize. We need to, take it out there to the market and see what are the linkages. How do we take them forward? And when I look at, so recently I've been doing a few roundtables in Assam, also with the British Council, when people came in and they were speaking about, the women power and the weaving and the backstrap looms, and very rightly pointed out by Nisafi just now, that women work at home with the backstrap loom, and also you mentioned that men are not usually working in that. So I think where we can take this forward is that we come up with designs, of course meaningful, which there are a lot of designers now that are working on, and we outsource work to rural areas where women can do them at home. It can be collected like an Amul kind of a thing that, you plan work, and which is happening in Rajasthan and Gujarat right now, where designers plan, they cut it out, and then there are areas for embroidery to be done. Here it's weaving, there it's more of embroidery. Of course, weaving is there too, but more of embroidery, and then you send it home, and they do it, and they bring it back, and then there is a platform to sell it. And I think with so much emphasis on Ashtalakshmi, I'm very sure that soon players are going to come in for e-marketplace, But again, for e-marketplace, you need a consistent supply chain. What often happens is there is just one or two garment, you take photographs, you put it online, and then it's sold very quickly. So I think the strategy has to be long-term. It has to be thought in a manner where you include every, aspect, whether it's music, of course, is huge in the Northeast. So if you take all these little things and you plan how to take it forward as a common platform. And I think there, fair trade, because women are working, with minimum wages. So what are the kind of wages that can be given to them? What is it that, we expect out of them? And then self-help groups, because a lot of silk, as there's a beautiful stall here on Muga silk and reeling and everything, and women are doing here right now, I saw in the morning. So all of that really needs to be promoted. As a part of India's delegation to France in 2021 for silk, there's an exhibition that happens in Lyon called Silk in Lyon. And in Silk in Lyon, they had people from all across the world for the last 10 years, but not from India. So I was lucky to be able to represent India in a small team and go there to France. And there, we took Muga with us. My first thought was, of course, we have beautiful silks. We have all the 5 which nobody else has, like Eri, Muga, Tussar, etc. But we have Muga, which nobody else has. So I think cashing in on these things, taking it to another level, bringing it out there. And of course, when we talk about craftspeople, I think what everybody needs is recognition and money. If enough recognition and money is given to them, why will they not come on board? So, I don't want to take too long, but these are a few things that I think we need to keep in mind and sort of take forward if we are to work in that direction. So, thank you.
A very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you so much for having me here. It's wonderful to hear all the speakers, and I think they've beautifully covered all the points. I could just actually keep quiet at this point of time. So I think we come from very fortunate work lives. I worked at the National Institute of Fashion Technology for over 30 years. And I have 3 people on this panel who've been at the Institute. So obviously we've been doing some great work in this direction. So I'm very proud of where we are coming from. Some of the things that we have done over our lives, and I won't take credit for it alone, but we did a lot of projects through the Ministry of Textiles, through other ministries, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Northeast, Ministry of Minority Affairs. And of course, many of our students, Nisafi, one of them, worked in the Northeast for their doctoral work. So one got to really understand and learn a lot about the textiles and the lives of people there. I'm very quickly going to just talk about one project that we did there. We did several, but I'm going to just talk about one which was in a place called Rajapukri in Assam, a village near Guwahati. And we went there, and it was like a village which was maybe 100 years removed from the city we live in. And the women were all weaving, some of them on the pit loom, some of them on the lion loom, and some of them on the treadle loom. But what was beautiful was that the traditions of the handloom were being very beautifully sustained in their villages. And I see some young people over here, many of them have disappeared, but especially for the young people, I would like to say that we are today at such a fortunate point in the history of time. Just yesterday, I was reading an article on a cafe in Amsterdam, which is a digital detox cafe. So you cannot carry any digital device inside this cafe. You can only go in and play board games, you can sing, you can dance, you can do whatever. So the world is beginning to recognize the value of things which are away from the digital, which are away from the fast track, and they are moving back to things which are slow. And really there's nothing slower than the handloom. But for the handloom to survive, we cannot just hope to sell it to an audience which is alien, because trying to say they don't understand it, they don't recognize it. But where does handloom most survive in this country? I think the 2 places it most survives it is in Orissa, and it survives in the Northeast. And why is that? Can anybody tell me why is that in the audience? The reason is that the local people use their own fabric. And in Orissa, you can walk around, you'll see most of the women are wearing their ikat saris. In the Northeast, you can walk around, you can see on special occasions, people will be using their dress. And that is something which is extremely important for the sustainability of culture, sustainability of tradition, and sustainability of meaning, what Nisafi mentioned briefly in her conversation, where we are not taking a product and taking it out of context and creating something which is very far removed from what it used to be or what it was. So we have to be modern. And I've taught at a fashion institute all my life, so we always talk about being modern and being innovative. But you cannot change the meaning of tradition so much that it doesn't remain tradition anymore. It becomes something totally different. So I think when we use it ourselves, then the meanings will continue. And India is beautifully poised to be #1 in this area, because the world is now looking towards the world is looking towards sustainability. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. I think I take a cue from your last word, is modernity, but not losing tradition. You know, there's this great judgment of the Supreme Court of India, which says that you can do everything with the Constitution, but you can't change the basic structure. The Keshavananda Bharati case. India has to be democratic, and it has to follow all the fundamental rights that are given to the people. So now we are poised at a time, especially Northeast, we are in the development phase, which is bringing in a tremendous amount of change, and also we are burdened with the responsibility of keeping our traditions intact. First amongst ourselves, in the community itself, and then again taking your place in the sun along with the other communities as a committee of communities. So this is a very important issue, I think, which we must address. And I think this is one of the purposes of this meeting. I don't know who's going to pick it up. That how do we preserve our tradition, yet take a step forward to be modern?
I would like to say something else as well, in line with this. Just expand it a little bit, which has already been referenced by Vandana ji. So since we are at this great time, poised at this particular time, we have the advantage of great knowledge of the past, some contemporary knowledge, which allows us to think of the future in a more comprehensive manner. And the point you raised about fair trade and ethical practices, I think should be foregrounded in whatever initiative we take in the Northeast, because we are doing it now for a people who have been known traditionally to be fair-minded.
I see.
Profitability has not been.
Would you like to add anything more to this, that how do we maintain the tradition yet be modern?
No, please.
Yeah, can I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So basically, this is exactly what we are doing at the Institute.
Please give us an advice for overall.
That is what. So I think to maintain traditionality, it is important, as Vandana ma'am just said, to continue to use the textiles that we are producing. But yes, we can look at different silhouettes, cuts, things like that, in terms of fashion, if we may say. So it is very important to also look at the current problems and use them. For example, there's this issue of sustainability, there's a lot of waste, etc., etc. To use this maybe in a way where we have traditional knowledge in terms of, say, weaving, pottery, multiple crafts that we have, how to take that as a different raw material and to use the know-how that we have already, and then to create another sort of set of things which can be taken forward. So the values have to be maintained, the traditionality has to be maintained, but it has to be very contemporary for the contemporary audience, for the youngsters. For example, just giving an example of block printing from another state, not from Northeast. Block printing has been in India since many years. But when they are to supply it to the Western market, you know, the lotuses become tulips. And when they are to supply it to, say, East, it becomes Saudagiri fabric, a different kind of fabric. So keeping the techniques and values same, but for a contemporary audience, the traditions, again, keeping the traditions same, the products can be new, is what I think we can do.
Vandana ma'am,
Hello.
I think
I want to, oh, go for it. No, I want to speak on festivals. My doctoral work is on the Hornbill Festival, and we've been talking only about textiles.
we'll come to the festivals part of it later
I want
on.
to answer your question.
Yeah.
With reference to festivals is, in the case of Nagaland, what we've done is we've invented one, Hornbill Festival. There's nothing traditional, there's no precedence, nothing. We've just invented one, and in this one that we've invented, we've put in everything. And it's worked fabulously for the state, because we literally don't have any homegrown industry.
I danced in the rain last year.
Wonderful. So, answering your question is, and so exactly what Ma'am Arshia was saying about Bihu as well. Although I do understand, in Nagaland also, every tribe has their own festivals, and each of these have, sort of more traditional significances. But the thing is, I think the question underlying this, how to do this, is also, what do you think of culture? Do you think of culture as something that is fixed, or do you think of culture as something that you make as you proceed?
It's
and
definitely something which keeps on moving.
So when you think of culture as something fluid that you can participate in making, then I think you're less afraid to experiment even with things like festivals.
Thank you.
I would like to add, I think that's an excellent point. And of course, tradition, as we say, is never static. It just, tradition is as we are going along. But what we need to really appreciate is that sometimes you started with the example of the British saying, let Northeast be a separate thing. And I think they did a great service to the Northeast, because a lot of the tradition remained intact. Otherwise, we would be like some of the other states where there's nothing left, or a lot of it is lost. So sometimes we have to put a break on certain things. And I'm all for innovation. I'm all for looking into the future. I'm all for using computers and all of that. But I think somewhere we have to keep the past along with us. Otherwise, our tradition will become so different that we won't recognize it for what it was. And that's the challenge, I think, and that's the crossroads we stand at. And one of the other things I'd like to talk about here is that how do we engage our younger people in this whole transition and in the way forward? Because unless and until the youth are involved, unless and until the youth are learning the music, the dance, the weaving, the skill sets that are important, these things will just die a natural death, because one generation would go and that'll be it. So where do we bring this conversation into schools? Where do we bring it into homes where a mother is still proud of teaching weaving to her daughter, or maybe to her son also at this point of time in our life? How do we do that, and how do we instill the joy of working with hands among the children? I think that's something which is extremely critical, and we need to think about that, not just in the Northeast, but across India.
Vandanaji, I think there is a little window of opportunity we have towards this, which was not there earlier when we were talking about a very fixed vision of education. But with this new NEP, on which there are many problems, I'm not saying it's fault-free, despite its problem, its real big opportunity is the inclusion of A in the STEM, making it STEAM. That A allows for arts from KG to 12 to be part of a child's life. Imaginative thinking and complete integration. That means a man with a mission needs to do this. It's not just any ordinary man. Words are not going to carry the day. It is possible to make these things part of life. I come from a state where the weaving is now left to khaddar and cases. It's Punjab. We still have some embroidery, but weaving is that. But I'm sure a child would like to weave. And that can, as you say, later in life, it becomes the non-fast track. It becomes meditative weaving, embroidery. I realize the value of embroidery now when I want to sit quietly, and I like the idea of just steadily working on something like this. So I think NEP allows us that one possibility. that's future-oriented, because it's going to take about 10, 20 years before the effects can be seen. What is it that we can do here? And I think a very amazing job has been done by...
One point I'd like to come back, because there's a lot to discuss on this issue.
We have
but
30 minutes left.
Let's come to a consensus as to how do we have a watchdog kind of a organization which will see that tradition is not being sacrificed. I mean, it can't be a government diktat saying that this is not. I think.
I would
so
like to add
a
point. If I can just come in here, Nisa, do you want to just talk about how the Naga groups are there and how they preserve
Yes. Again, as I mentioned earlier, depending on the community that you're from, the leniency towards contemporization, product diversification depends on that. Some communities may allow you to contemporize. They may be more lenient towards that, but in cases of other communities, suppose if you take, for example, the Nagas, so then after you've done the whole research and you sit with them and you have, you sit with the associations, the local bodies, it could actually turn into a very serious offense, if you sort of contemporize without proper context. So in cases like this, what do? We could, instead of looking at contemporizing the textile itself or just, the fashion aspect of it, product diversification, could we look at cultural exchange programs? Because, in the 1920s, pre-dyed yarn was introduced in the Northeast. And this made it very convenient for them to start using synthetic pre-dyed yarn. But as ma'am mentioned earlier, when we're looking at the global market, there's a need for sustainable material. So then if we're having cultural exchange programs, are we looking at the type of yarns that can be used? Are we looking at natural dyes? At one point of time, the rest of India, we're all, the other parts of India, we're using pure indigo to get the color blue, right? But in the Northeast, we use, I'm getting a bit technical because this sort of topic has to be tackled from a very micro level also. So in Northeast, what we use is the Chinese rain bell or the Assam indigo. But of course, because maybe it was traded in the past before and it's not available anymore, or it's not available locally anymore, so are there other alternatives that we could look at and yet still, revive natural dyes?
I think, Nishri, we'll cut this at this moment. Okay. And one thing definitely is emerging from this discussion is that we must empower the community to really be watchdogs on preserving of their traditions, so that it does not happen that it loses its basic character. I think that should be a part of our whole cultural education process. And self-regulation must be an integral part built into the community culture that we have to do it. Now modernism is coming in, so alternative uses of traditional things are there, and who's the best person other than Dr. Sampath to tell us what does he see of modernizing traditional crafts for the modern day market? And secondly, how do you set up the supply chain so that once the market is established or the demand is created, that you carry on?
Sir, we are in an institute, in a place where we can train artisans. So if government can set up modern machinery in our, if Shillong is there and we have NID here, so if they can set up an exclusive lab for our local artisans and nearby artisans, where we can also train and they can come and use those machines. And then we should have one design center where we constantly give them the designs to the artisans with our help of our students and faculty, and then we can produce them and reach to the market. If market is changing and if we are able to reach that market, with the products of Northeast. There's nothing like that. And coming back to the just one thing, Hornbill Festival. So we stayed in all parts. We know so many festivals, but why we did not know about Hornbill Festival? Who are the actual visitors there? If we can pull in some visitors there from outside the state or outside the Northeast region, saying that this is a festival, there is a special flight or special arrangement, and where we have this one stay homes and all. So the artisans can also sell their products in those places where the economic growth is more. That's what I feel, sir.
Dr.
I
Sampath,
think another point I'd just like to add here is that alternative uses, my personal experience is that there's this village called Sarthebari in Assam which produces bell metal things. You know, so they were doing the traditional things for donkey's years. So I managed to get in touch with the Gerda Hengel Foundation in Germany, and they sent 2 artisans to convert the botta, a plate kind of a thing, into a fruit bowl. And alternative uses. So I suppose NID, since you are here and you are new as yet, we hope that you'll take up a project of identifying all the crafts that can be upgraded to international needs by altering. The thing remains the same, the mura remains the same, maybe you can add something else, the chair or the bucket, the basket can be put to alternative uses. The back basket can become another kind of a bamboo backpack. Those kind of innovations which I think...
And I think around the world, images like the bamboo backpack or this alternative use of the horai or the artistry involved in the horai is of great value. You have a lot of European foundations like the Frederick Ebert Foundations and all that are actually funding the crafts initiatives around the world. So we should work together.
Bhandari ma'am, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I think I want to say something which I'm very passionate about. I think every time we talk about craft, we talk about how are we going to make supply chains. Craft is a handmade process, and handcraft specially. So if we are going to do supply chains, and we are going to do productions, and we are going to talk about exports, then we have to move to a different sector. We are talking about the MSME sector, or we're talking about a small-scale industry sector. It is not handcraft anymore. The minute we try to do that, we will kill the handcraft. So that's something very important. Every time, every student who goes to the craft sector, we tell them, please be conscious of this fact. Do not change the craft to industry, because you are killing 2 things. Make a separate industry and process that further. So I'm talking as a purist for a craft sector. The second thing I want to talk about, all the rage in the world, and Dr. Lindam studied that in her doctoral work also. Incidentally, she just got a degree this year, so it's all very fresh, is cultural appropriation. The West is now talking about how cultural appropriation is so relevant. India has talked about it through their geographical indications. The government is very strongly talking about it, that you cannot produce a Naga shawl in Banaras and say it is a Naga shawl. You cannot produce a Chanderi in Delhi and call it a Chanderi. So we cannot culturally appropriate products. We have to remember the sanctity of where they come from, and I think respect that and continue that. And please, again, I will say, do not confuse craft with industry. They're 2 separate things. Incidentally, in addition to loving craft, I'm also an advisor for the Export Promotion Council for Handicrafts. So I understand the difference very well in these 2 things. The third thing I'd like to my little 2 pieces of advice to Dr. Sampath, since he's sitting there in Assam, in NID. A lot of crafts as we speak today are getting lost. They are becoming extinct. We don't know about them. Nisafi mentioned the indigo. We did find an elderly lady in this village who knew how to make indigo. We tried to record some things, but she was, she gave us generic statements. But if we can work a little bit more on the languishing crafts, to record them, to revive them, of course, we will provide design through our students, but rather than setting design labs for artisans, I think if we can also do research and documentation of things which are, finishing as we speak, they're just becoming extinct in front of eyes, that would be amazing. Thank you.
I think what Dr. Vandana has argued for is very relevant, that none of the things that we have spoken about is more important than the other. All are separate irons in the fire and must be worked on. Some have an urgency. The languishing craft program has to be it's something that needs to start right away. I just mentioned one small languishing craft that disappeared in front of me. I used to wear hairpins, and I used to wear a Tamil hairpin, carved Tamil with a little thing. I have been looking for it endlessly. I can't find it. I have one broken piece that I'm keeping that somebody may want to copy it or something like that. So that is something that needs to be worked on a little faster. But one point I want to make, and Hornbill is a wonderful example, is cycle. We can't do this and unleash it. We have to find the recipient of that effort to complete the cycle. So, as manufactured festivals, and the success of Hornbill is one to go by, I think we have communities that are already there waiting to be able to come to the Northeast. If we could just fill in the little gaps that exist. For instance, there is a huge bird watchers community in the world. The Northeast offers you rare birds, rare bird behavior. We have fixed timing. So through the year, actually, bird life is very active in the Northeast. Purnima Devi Burman and so many others who are working on birds there, Amur Falcon Project, all of this can become one. And with this, you can weave in your weavers, the images, the songs, the music festival. Yes, have a little platform for a classical dance festival also out there, folk dance festivals. People want immersive experiences, khana pina, but hygiene levels must be maintained. No lahe lahe there. You just have to go fast.
Thank you. I think
Can I
you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add to the point that Dr. Sampath made, that you spoke about having machinery and labs and people coming in. What I would like to say, and design center, what I would like to say is very recently, I visited Kashmir and I saw this design center started by Kamla Devi Chattopadhyay, okay? But there are no people there. So the thing is, there has to be a political will, there has to be a will in the community that they will take it forward. And I think more than machines or anything that may come in at a later stage, what is important is to make a community where people feel safe, that yes, this is the place where we can work around in crafts. There is, maybe yarn banks. People are not getting enough yarns, not getting enough material. So yarn banks, design ideation, places where people can come together, work together. And slightly I will differ from Vanna ma'am's purist approach, because what I see is when some people become too purist, then the craft is also lost. So, there has to be a balance. One has to look at, not that, okay, it will be like that somewhere, because people need to earn, the people who are associated with the craft. I mean, I totally agree with a lot of things, but I think here, a slight difference is that...
Tulika, can I cut you down?
Yes, please, sir.
No, but the thing is that the sum and substance of this is that Government of India has a lovely program called the Guru Shishya Parampara.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the money available is very little compared to the number of dying arts. I happen to be the chairman of the committee of NEZCC looking after this program, and then I find it's very difficult to find people to really accommodate all that are required to be done. So I suppose the recommendations of this panel would go to the Ministry of Culture especially, that through its organs, the zonal cultural centers, the Ministry of Culture itself, and through the CCRT, the Guru Shishya Parampara allocations must increase so that more dying arts can be included and we can ensure the longevity of the proposal. But again, coming to the question of festivals, you'd be surprised that we have 400 tribes, sub-tribes in Northeast. So imagine 3 or 4 festivals. So, the tragic part of it is that even in academia or even in the cultural level, workers level, we have not been able to do the cultural mapping of the festivals.
Yes.
Which
That's
I think is a very vital issue. I think if you have anything to add to it, or if you can suggest a mechanism or organization as to how this cultural mapping has to be done, we'd love to have.
Yeah, so if I can talk about banglanatak.com, banglanatak.com is an organization that's working in this field, and they have brought to life the Baul, music in Bengal. And they were working also in Rajasthan recently with UNESCO. And I was supposed to evaluate, so I went around and I saw the Guru Shishya Parampara thing, because, when you talk to the musicians over there, they say that BA, MA mein koi nahi sikhata ki hum kya kara rahe hain, no? The music, BA, MA. So our people have no knowledge. But basically, if we look at it, the apprenticeship or the Guru Shishya Parampara was the way of learning. So now their proposal, which I liked, which I put forward that time also, is that if, in formal training, the students pay the fee for some other program, but if they are to be given certification, of this Guru Shishya Parampara learning, if they can take it forward, maybe that is a better approach rather than the regular institutions.
I think our sponsors, NEHDC, which is there, has a very important role in this, in the sense of documenting what are the dying crafts. And I think they can't really work unless the government comes to help them out. But I think it will be a part of the program or the assigned duty of NEHDC to at least document the dying crafts. I think NEC, for those who haven't seen them, is anybody here from NEC amongst us? They have done a lovely thing, is that we tend to forget houses. The architecture of houses is a very important thing, especially in the tribal communities, because each community has its own distinct design. So fortunately, Northeastern Council has taken up a lovely project which they have completed, but they printed the book, about 1,000 copies only, which they are run out of. I would request all of you, those who are interested in the housing component of the Northeast tribes, should go through that book or request NEC. I take this opportunity of requesting NEC to please bring that out on a larger scale and make it available to all, because it is a culture which strives on. I think the attraction of Kisama is the different huts into different designs, which is an attraction by itself, as it gives an indication of the different tribes. So I think NID can also come into that and possibly do model studies for your students, so that how they can adopt. Because I personally have associated, again, blowing my own trumpet, is that we have built up a barrack for the forest guards of Pobitora Sanctuary near Guwahati. It's entirely made of bamboo. It's treated bamboo, so it's working out very well. So these kind of interventions and innovations, maybe we could think about. Now, I'll come back to the third point, accessories.
And what are the music festival for next year lined?
Okay, that is what I am asking you.
In this context, this is very important. We have to decide what is the USP of each state, and how can we
now every state. Now the difficulty about that is that every state will think that ours is a USP, but whether it's the USP for the third party is again a slightly difficult thing. So we shall not go into that. We'll talk. That is the economic part of it. Our thing is cultural at the moment.
So I just want to mention culturally the idea of Dakshin Chitra. If you have been to Chennai, just about 45 minutes down the lovely East Coast Road is Dakshin Chitra. It is a fixed museum, but living, in the sense houses of every community, the Moplas of Kerala, the Banjara huts, houses, they actually pick up an entire house and bring it. So a vast amount of land has been dedicated. Weavers sit there. It's a beautiful mix of more than crafts museum here. something like that.
I
The
think
Northeast
that's a prescription for each state, I think, to take up, is that you have a village of your different tribes and communities in a select place, which should be a living thing, not a museum piece of, you have dioramas around and people, statues. Rather, if you can make it living, at least for certain...
would become like that, but we don't want it.
I just want to say about not just festivals, but when it comes to whether it's textiles, crafts, etc., documenting is all fine, but the thing is, the problem with documenting is it just stays in one place, only academics can access it. My work has been to explain it to the general public, because, and also I find this very problematic, the separating the design. What is a designer anyway? Because when it comes to traditional crafts and textiles, the weaver is the designer. Why should a designer come and start teaching weavers how to design? The craftsperson is the designer. So I think, even when it comes to design and sort of design pedagogy, that has to be rethought. It comes from a very capitalist framework that some expert will come, descend, and start teaching everybody how to design.
Yeah.
How do we facilitate makers? Because, the process of making is, how do we facilitate people who are making and designing at the same time, simultaneously, is the rest of us, and as an academic, as a writer, is explain it to people. Because what is French wine anyway? Honestly, I don't know the difference between, my Bordeaux and anything. It doesn't make, but there's so many courses, there are tours, people who will explain it to you, who will brainwash you into thinking that you know the difference. Now, I think that is one very, very important aspect that we can all participate in, is don't change the product. Don't turn it into, fruit bowls. Teach people, this is what is the USP of this product. This is how you can use it. These are the ways that you can respect and honor the designer maker of these products. I think that's very important.
So that brings me to another point of today's discussion, is that survival of the crafts is very important, in the sense that we must find a user, we have to find a maker. As of now, I think the makers are available, but the buyers are not available at the extent we'd require, that someone would pay the price which the weaver is expecting. After all that, we don't seem to calculate the unseen work that is being done by the weaver, or the craft or the tradition that she's carrying on for, or he or she is carrying on for centuries. So branding comes in here. I mean, there is no amount, because again now we have reached a situation where, for the gamusa, which has a GI tag, half of it was made in Coimbatore, until the assembly had to pass an act to say that you cannot have machine-made mekhla chadars, which Arshia is wearing. You can't have Banarasi mekhla chadars in silk, and you cannot have gamchas made in Coimbatore, passing off as the original. So it will call for a brand and branding of the local products. I don't know, how would you suggest?
The GI tag already
exists. The GI tag is there, but can we have something like the silk mark? Or can we have the hallmark?
The GI
or state
is
mark?
actually stronger than that. I think what the government has to look at is, how do we implement it? Because I think it's a beautiful idea which has been worked on, but the implementation somehow is lacking. And I think I'd just like to add one more thing to what Arshia said earlier, which was that, why can't we bring, like, the birds are there and we bring the bird watchers there. So combining multiple things, like, there's a small village in Uttarakhand, Munsiari, and they have this beautiful craft set up over there where they do weaving, where the women are trained, the local women in the village are trained to become bird watchers. So they actually go through training, so the tourists can come and stay with them. They have Airbnbs. They're trained on how to run their homes as Airbnbs. They are also trained on how to collect local herbs and then create medicines out of them or supply them, because they're living right in the heart of the Himalayas. And I think to take multiple aspects of life and put them together and then become tourist hubs, and that's run by an individual woman who's just an entrepreneur. So not just depending on the government to do everything, but to hone entrepreneurs within the villages who can then become these hubs for all the type of cultural activities, music, dance, whatever their traditional food, homes, clothes, everything together could.
I think
could
so far as
actually
the branding is concerned, which we all agree that it is very important to separate the fake from the real thing. So there I think our sponsor NEHDC has a big role, and the government would come forward to help them, you know, to really establish the Northeastern brand. Maybe it could have statewide brand or branding or stamp of approval or something. ISI mark, as they say, you know.
Yeah,
I think you people would be.
Some years ago, this is when donor was created, soon after this, or maybe it was around the time the donor was created. There were two things mainstreamed in the Indian governance system. One was HIV, because at that time there was this big hawa about HIV, and the other was the Northeast. So every CSR rupee had a component for the Northeast and for HIV. So it was very easy to raise money like that. I think if regions are to be considered, it is time to give a thrust or a relook or a variation on the Northeast aspect. Aaj bhi chalta hai. I know that Kathak Kendra, for instance, often uses its Northeast budget and on a 3-day, to run a 3-day festival, for instance, and every day they will have at least one representation from the Northeast, and using that as a bahana, they get their money raised. I think it's time to also look at institutional changes, governance changes, which allow you. Give it a 10-year window, but give it. Give it at a time when there's determination.
So I think there's the message to the department. Satpathy ji, are you Mr. Satpathy? No. Oh, sir is there. So it's a great occasion today. We have you here in our midst. I think, then again, I think we were talking about, you know, there was another thing which I see is that everywhere around the world, we have textile galleries. Even in Delhi, we have it. But let's say for Nagaland, for Assam.
I want to put a point across. We have Sovima Weaving Center, and very recently, you might know about it, Jasmina. Yes, Heirloom Naga Center. And other than this, we also have the Airy Silk Village, which is, they just launched very recently. So over there you have weaving happening, you have at times if you have
live centers.
Yes, yes, display of.
See, what happens is
that
the publicity or the reach of reaching those places, those are community efforts. So I think in a formal way, which is a part of the tourist circuit of visiting the state capital, let's say in Shillong, if you go, where do I get to see? The only one is in Barawazar, which is hardly a place where you can park your car to go and see the handloom textile museum there. It's in, you don't. So weaving villages are coming up as an integral part of every state. I think they should arrange for collection and arrange for periodic.
They also have stays there. They have, yes. And the interesting part about the
music
Nagaland,
which goes around with the weaving or the creative process.
Yes, and the very interesting part about the Heirloom Naga Center is also, even during summers, they even have summer schools for children to learn how to weave. So,
ma'am, you are here after you've had a glass of water. This is the role of the Crafts Council of India. You know, some work had begun in the Northeast, but somehow it got, it's lost its way somewhere. So can the Crafts Council of India be leveraged to really promote what we are trying to do today?
Absolutely. I think the Craft Council should be doing this. But just remember, Craft Council is a volunteer body. They don't have funding from any sources. So whatever they do is, their own efforts they put in to promote. But they have a big reach into different areas. and they can definitely promote. And the Craft Council of Assam, I believe, is quite active, you know, and we could leverage that. But I still feel that it is the institutes which can make a bigger difference. I'll give you an example of NIFT. We've always done craft documentation since the inception of NIFT. In 2016, we started a program with the Ministry of Textiles where we said craft is going to become an integral part of every semester, every student in the institute. So which means that we plan to train over 40 to 50,000 students over a 5-year period. And I cannot tell you what a sea change it has made to the craft sector. So many of our students, instead of looking at industry, looking at fashion, looking at the urban, they are looking at rural, they are looking at craft. So I think institutional change can be a sea change. And of course, institutes like craft councils can make some change, individuals can make some change, but the way institutions can make changes is incredible. I've seen it in my lifetime, and I'm telling you, it's amazing, because the power of the youth is just too much. You train 50,000 students to work with craft. What are they going to do? They're going to work with craft, and look at the change that brings in the country.
I think this should be taken very seriously. Of the 6 panelists you have who are speaking, and I include myself in it, 5 of them come from an institutional connection. In fact, I find myself handicapped that I don't have an institution. But that also allows me a little fearlessness in my ideas so that I can share it. Sometimes a good idea comes out of just breaking the mold and going beyond it. But the fact that we already have institutions in place, we should definitely exploit them to the fullest, and they haven't been exploited.
I think today's occasion is a great one, which is showing us how institutional involvement and NGO involvement can really break the reach the objects that we are trying to do, is that get the weaver, get the crafts known, surviving, retain its originality, and represent the culture of the nation. So I think another point is, I was facing a problem with the accessories part of it. I have seen northeastern jewelry being basically silver based, or cowries, shells, coral based. The current supply of originals is getting very difficult. In fact, I think there are organizations like MMTC, or there's the Handicrafts Commissioner there. They really haven't taken on the issue headlong as to solve the problem. So what has happened is that when in the NEZC I am seeing that fake plastics are being used for the original things and being charged the original price. So I think there is another important aspect of it, especially in the accessories, getting the silver available, getting the coral available, getting the
if I may just say, that was what I was trying to say earlier. Whether it's textiles or jewelry or any material, places like NID, I mean IICD, we'd love to be there, we do come often, but any institution, I mean, if that can be a material bank, they can guide people on exactly how to use, because material is something which is really being polluted right now. So all these things will come in handy, and also for the branding. Now people are using AI to help with branding, and we were talking about states being in that. Now they're using attachments with the loom to prove that it is handloom, to prove that it's provenance also. So I think these things, true, the material is very important, and we need to have banks to ensure that people or makers can come and get it from there.
I want to sound a voice of caution. So suddenly you have these treaties, international treaties, that have become very powerful, and natural products cannot be taken from here to there. Sitars and veenas which have ivory inlay, Purana, they are now creating a problem. Similarly, taking jewelry which has animal parts in it, while it was, you know, a part of the lifestyle there, those boar horns and all that, teeth and all that, we're going to have a very big problem.
If you look behind,
yeah,
quills
yeah.
of the
Quills
porcupine,
porcupine
are no
yeah,
longer
you can't take
available.
them. Yes.
Nor the boars.
So we need to be very
teeth of the
careful
boars.
and keep that whole picture, nahi to some innocent will be caught and taken off to a jail somewhere.
Yeah, but then again, it's about policies. We need to sort of...
I mean, no, why I've raised the issue is that we must find a solution for the actual makers. I mean, we substituted ivory by camel bone, maybe, which is not much of a problem. So can we think in those lines and really help those people who are at a loss and going in for plastic substitutes? Especially shells and all are looking they look terrible. And, you know, from a distance it's fine, but once they come close to you, you realize that they are fakes. And that robs the entire beauty of the costume or the apparel, or the jewelry, in fact.
I think that's a bit subjective, I think, in terms of, specifically with Nagaland, when it comes to accessories, this is, you know, accessories design and production is actually the first foray that very young women, teenagers, even children, young people make into design and entrepreneurship. So they cannot source these, you know, sort of original materials. They need, you know, the cheap stuff, you know, to sort of use. And the second thing is, when it comes to the original ornaments, at least in the Naga context, I would be remiss if I don't say that I find it very problematic, you know, to have original boar tusk necklaces available for anyone to buy, because not everybody should buy it and not everybody should wear it. It's very specific. So I think in this context, having copies or versions that actually look substandard or even ugly, that works better. I mean, take that ugly substandard one back to your country and wear it. Well done. Let that be a memory of Nagaland. But to have the original, that becomes, I think, a bit, for me,
I think you have to change with times, as what you say is. But all said and done, I think closest to the original, what we can do is definitely to be help to the people who are involved in the crafts. Do we need, I think, now the gems we've run out of time. And I think people have heard us quite a lot. I thank all the... because culture is such a vast thing, it's no end to it, but thank you. We have just had flagship issues and pointers. So far as our panels are concerned, I think we have finished off with what we had to say. The summary of it is that we have to get organized to separate the fakes from the original, see that the tradition is maintained, find modern uses of traditional things, and government support to artisans so that the arts and crafts don't die out. And cultural listing or cultural mapping is very important in the whole exercise. And all the ministries involved should have a certain apex organization to sit together, which Arshia had mentioned that without an institution, getting things done becomes very difficult. So we shall now go to our representative from Donor Ministry. He had a question to ask. Please. Declaration of USP of the state.
So that may be yesterday's and in the inaugural panel.
Yes.
Our Honorable Minister Donor was there, and three chief CMs of 3 northeastern states were there, including CM of Meghalaya. So he informed that he is going to make music and sports as make it as a tourist theme.
Attraction, yes.
So why not just a hornbill in Nagaland?
To answer your question, because our CM didn't come for this event, because we're having the hornbill right now, Nagaland already has declared its USP, which is we are the land of festivals. And the Hornbill Festival is
I
supposed
suppose
to be
the ministries, respective states would take it up.
So why not this art, craft and music, the congregation of all these come into a festival? So why not we organize such events in all the states? Besides the regular items, let us make the festivals in all the states and brand that festival. and make the theme art, craft, and music, bring it together in one forum, along with the handloom, handicrafts. Those who are dying, we are saying that those are dying now without proper government support.
I think, thank you.
We
I think we already have this kind of a mechanism. Ministry of Culture has this festival called the Octave, which is of 8 states performing in different parts of the country. We recently had one in the Rashtrapati Nilayam at Hyderabad. So I think the donor ministry and the culture ministry could come together and carry these northeastern festivals either singly, state-wise, or as a conglomerate through the Octave festivals in different parts of the country.
I think the Octave was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
It gave each state an equal value. Har sur ka apni jagah hai. No one sur is more important than the other. So they worked together as a team. But within that, we must understand that each state has its different flavor. Why state? Even each region in every state has a distinct flavor. I feel that the Octave should definitely be continued. It just needs to, it should be a visit Octave festival and a traveling Octave festival. So different parts of
and also Satriya and Manipuri festivals all throughout.
So Satriya and Manipuri, I wanted to refer to the Khajuraho Dance Festival. What started some 30 years ago or 40 years ago as a mere dance festival, linking you with the architecture and sculpture, has today become a huge festival, including a separate dance festival, which is modern dance. वो सब link between the temple and all that, वो अपनी जगह, that also happens. But you today have a modern dance component of it. You have fabrics, you have paintings.
So Arshia, we've run out of time and my warnings have come. So the last question, if anybody has.
Yeah, hello. So just wanted to know, whether this committee could suggest something teething to this implementation of Handloom Act 1985. Because the whole thing, what problem we are having is just textiles, mill products, mekhala chadars, everything is coming. But this act is already there, 1985 Handloom Act was already there. How we can strengthen that so that this machine material cannot come?
In governance, it is the political will. If the government of the day decides that we shall do something, it will happen. So I think that is the first pass, and to make the government do things to happen will depend on how the people and the media especially react to it.
Yeah, just wanted to know if there is a recommendation.
Can I suggest one thing? I think it's happening a lot with single entrepreneurs, where it was also mentioned by one of the panelists that, you know, we are talking about at source who has made it. So we talk about traceability of a product. And you have QR codes on the product, and you can scan that and say who made my clothes. So in fact, in fashion, it has become a very important thing where you can scan the QR code and say where this product is coming out of. Handloom, some people have started to do that, but I think that is something which needs a greater impetus.
Again, it gives a sort of transparency. Total
so thank you very much. I think we've absolutely run out of time, as all panelists, the moderators have to say, whether it's in TV or on live situations. I thank the panelists for giving their insights and inputs into the whole thought process. I think we have come off with a lot of points to really take forward to, and hope NEHDC would take it up. We thank the Ministry of Donor for holding the Ashtalakshmi and giving us an opportunity to be here. It's a bold initiative, as I said in my opening remarks, that the Lakshmi has been brought in. So the money and the name and the fame and the peace of the house will start from the Lakshmis. The 8 have been identified separately, but as a part of a total conglomerate. This again is a brilliant idea coming from the Prime Minister, the Honorable Prime Minister, in breaking traditions which was there from 1826. So we look forward to more kind of meetings this, and hope that the Ashtalakshmi festivals do their rounds throughout the country, starting with the Northeast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, our panelists, for your efforts and time. It was really a riveting session. Indeed, Northeast India's arts, crafts, and music hold immense potential to contribute to both the economic and cultural revitalization of India, given their uniqueness, diversity, and rich tradition. As we wrap up this session, I request Ms. Monalisa Das, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Donor, to kindly do the honor to give a small token of appreciation as a gift for our guests, please. Ladies and gentlemen, can we hear some applause for our panelists here?
I would also like to request Sri Chanchal Kumar, Secretary, Ministry of Donor, and Brigadier R.K. Singh, Managing Director, NEHHDC, and Dr. Shriparna Ma'am for a group photo with our panel.